Commanders trade for 49ers wide receiver Deebo Samuel. Likey or no likey? We've got the top 5 reasons the Commanders made the trade right here, right now on Ref the District. Greetings and salutations, and welcome to Ref the District. I am the Stoner. This is another of our off-season installments of our top 5 list. This is a very timely one, of course. This is the top 5 reasons the Commanders traded for 49ers wide receiver Deebo Samuel. There's a lot to get into on this, a lot on this side, a lot on that side. We're going to talk all about it. But before we do, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications so you know that when we're putting out new content. And hey, share this with a fellow Commanders fan so that we can all congregate together and talk Commanders football here on Ref the District. So here's what I'm going to get into. First, we're going to give the details, the facts about the trade. Then we're going to go over the top 5 reasons that the Commanders actually made the trade. And then at the very end, I'm going to give you my analysis of whether or not I think this was a good decision by Washington to make this trade. I'll give you a hint, a little spoiler alert. I may or may not have already pre-ordered a Deebo Samuel Commanders #1 jersey. Just throwing it out there. Take what you will from that. But hey, look, this was a big deal. So first, let's get into the facts of this. Washington trades a 2025 5th-round draft pick for 49ers wide receiver Deebo Samuel. That 5th-round pick, of course, is the 29th pick of the 5th round. So it's at the very end, somewhere around 158. But if you add in all the compensatory picks, they're going to get into the 3rd round and the 4th round. This is into the 160s. So this is basically, if you will, it is a 5th round pick, but it's going to turn into a 6th round pick in terms of the number when you finally get to that pick that San Francisco is going to make. So that's the facts of the actual trade. Straight up, 5th round draft pick for Deebo Samuel. What does it mean contractually for Washington? Well, Washington takes on $17.5 million, specifically 17.54, whatever you want to call it. We'll just call it $17.5 million for his cap hit in 2025. That is not guaranteed money to Deebo, but it is guaranteed cap hit to Washington. So if they cut him, he doesn't get the money. Washington still, of course, is on the hook on the cap side for that $17.5 million. They can, however, they have the option before the league year starts, they have the option to convert that into 2 different years. So what they could do is they could say, what we want to do if we take this option, we'll hit $5.2 million in 2025, and then we'll split it up. And then in 2026, we'll take a $12.3 million. So it's 5.2 and 12.3 next year. Either way, whether he's on the team or not, you have to take those cap hits. So Washington just has to decide when they want to use those cap hits. Either way, they've got to take the hit in 2025, all of it, 17.5, or they can split it, 5.2 this year, 12.3 next year. That's their option. So they still have over 60 plus million, 64, $65 million of cap money. So this is the reason why Washington made so much cap room, so that they can make deals like this for a guy like Deebo Samuel. So they still have plenty of money. Now they've got a lot of free agents, no doubt, that they need to sign either their own or outside. So that's going to take a lot of money. And of course, you got your draft picks and all that. So they are going to have to figure out how they want to split up this cap hit. Either way, Deebo Samuel is essentially playing for his football future. If he wants another contract, he's got to ball out this year. He's got to make sure that he proves to everyone that he's still got something left in the tank and he's worthy of another contract. So he's perfectly fine playing on this deal for this year, whatever it's going to be cap-wise. He's going to play for the $17.5 million or whatever they decide to pay him this year. And then he's going to try to turn that into a bigger contract down the road. Think about what Washington did this past year with Adam Peters. He brought in guys just like this: Jeremy Chin, Zach Ertz, Bobby Wagner, Dante Fowler Jr. 1-year deals. Prove it and see if you're going to get paid either here or somewhere else. And guess what? All those guys are going to get paid. They're going to get raises because they proved it. And that's what Deebo is going to do this year. The number that he's getting this year, the $17.5 million, is 18th ranking in cap money for 2025 for wide receivers. So do you consider Deebo Samuel a top 18 receiver? Whether or not you do, that's what he's getting paid as, is a $17.5 million deal. So that's the details of that actual trade. Deebo Samuel to Washington for a 2025 fifth-round draft pick. This does not become official until the league year starts on March 14th, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. He still has to pass a physical. It still has to go through the administrative part of it. It's basically a done deal, but does not become official until March 14th, and he passes a physical. So let's get into the top 5 reasons that the Commanders made this deal for Deebo Samuel. First and foremost, Washington is a better team today than they were before they acquired Deebo Samuel. Make no mistake about that. Regardless of how you feel about the money, the draft compensation, his health, whatever, they're better now with Deebo Samuel on their team than they were without Deebo Samuel on their team. So keep that in mind. I don't know what the odds were for Washington to be the one that made the trade for Deebo Samuel, but I do know this, that you would want to go to Bet Online to check those odds. And if you would have got in on Washington, you probably would have won a good chunk of change, because Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, Bet Online is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA and college basketball to the NHL and UFC, Bet Online continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, Bet Online has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. Bet Online, the game starts here. But let's go down this list. Number 5, production. Deebo Samuel produces. Healthy or not, he produces. Is he that number one wide receiver right now? Not necessarily. But let's look at this 2024 season, first of all. The criticism I see about his 2024 season is that he wasn't productive, that maybe he was playing a little heavier than usual, but he had basically his worst season as a pro in his age 28 year in 2024. That was good for 806 scrimmage yards, which would be the second most on Washington for a wide receiver. The second most, better than any other receiver not named Terry McLaurin. And this was a Deebo Samuel down year, his worst year as a pro, other than his one injury year. More than 800 yards. It would be the 4th most yards from scrimmage on the entire team, behind only B-Rob, Terry McLaurin, and Jaden Daniels. That's it. His down year is still the second best receiver and 4th best on the entire team. And when you don't count the quarterback, the 3rd best, barely behind B-Rob, who had 958, and barely behind Jaden Daniels, who had 890. He had 806 yards from scrimmage and 4 touchdowns. Think about this. In a down year, when he had 136 yards rushing in 2024 for San Francisco, the combined yards for Washington receivers rushing was 36. 36 total. Diami had 26, Oz had 8, and Terry McLaurin had 2. That's it for receivers rushing. Now, that's not their job. I get it. But you want receivers who can do that, who can make plays running the ball. That's what Deebo Samuel does. And so production-wise, if you remember, sure, everybody says he's not 2022 Deebo Samuel when he had 1,400 yards and 1,800 total yards and 15 touchdowns. I get it. He's not that right now, but he still produces even in a down year. And his 670 receiving yards last year for San Francisco in a down year and a bad San Francisco offense this past year, mostly because of injuries, still would have been second on the team behind Terry McLaurin. Better than Noah, better than Oz, better than Diami, better than Zach, better than any of them on a down year. So that's what he brings. Number 5 is production. Number 4, he brings a little something called YAC, yards after the catch. These are his ranks in the last 5 years, last 6 years in the league for wide receivers in YAC after receptions, yards after catch. Last year, down year, that's what I keep hearing, down year for him. He was 6th of all receivers. 23, 1st. 2022, 3rd. 2021, 1st. 2020, 1st. 2019, 3rd. That's what he brings. He brings YAC. He's tough, over the middle. He has great balance. And so that's the biggest thing that he brings. And also remember that Washington threw the 3rd most screen passes in the entire NFL. That's what you call a marriage made in heaven. A guy who likes to get YAC and a team who likes to throw behind the line of scrimmage and ask for YAC. So that's the number 4 thing that the Commanders traded for. The number 3 thing is familiarity. Familiarity. Adam Peters used to be in San Francisco and has been around Deebo Samuel his entire career. Deebo's entire career. Anthony Lynn, who is Washington's running backs coach and run game coordinator, in San Francisco was the running backs coach and assistant head coach. Knows Deebo very well. That's a common theme with a lot of these guys. They know the players that they're bringing in, the veterans that they're bringing in. They know them. They've been around them. They've coached them. So they understand what they're getting. They understand that Deebo Samuel is the type of player that would fit this offense. So when you bring in a Deebo Samuel, when you bring in a Bobby Wagner, who Dan Quinn coached in Seattle defensively, when you bring in a Zach Ertz, who Cliff Kingsbury coached in Arizona, when you bring in a Dante Fowler, who Dan Quinn coached in Dallas, and Joe Witt coached in Dallas, they understand what they're bringing in. They're not just saying, ooh, I heard this Deebo Samuel guy is good. Let's see what he's got. No, they're very familiar with Deebo Samuel and what he can bring to this offense and this locker room. Number 2, versatility. He can play outside. He can play inside. He can play the tight end position. He can play running back. He can play anywhere on the field. His best position nowadays is in the slot or out of the backfield. He's no longer that threat on the outside. And his stats from 2024 will show you that. But you don't need him to be that guy. They didn't bring him in here to be this number 1 receiver and this guy down the field. They brought him in to be the YAC guy, to be the guy over the middle, to be that zone breaker that Zach Ertz was this past year. And maybe now you have 2 if they bring Zach Ertz back. But he's entirely versatile. He can go in the slot. He can go outside. He can go even from the tight end position. He can line up in your backfield. He can do it all. That's a huge reason that Washington brought him in to in this trade. And the last thing, the number 1 reason they brought him in, because he's got that dog in him. DAWG. And that's what they're building in Washington. That's what the coaches want. They want football players. They want tough guys. They want competitive guys, guys who are dying to win. And Deebo's been that close to a Super Bowl, to winning a Super Bowl. He's been in a Super Bowl. And that's the kind of guys. He's hungry. He's hungry for a contract. He's hungry for winning. He wants to play for guys that are also hungry. And that's what is the biggest reason they brought him in. Again, we talked about familiarity. These are coaches who understand who Deebo Samuel is because they've coached him and because they've been in the front office with him on the team. And that's a massive point in what Washington is trying to build with Adam Peters and Dan Quinn in the type of culture and the type of leadership, the type of locker room that they want. In order to be, you got to follow up on a 12-win NFC championship game team. You got to bring in the right players. And I talked about earlier, these are the same kind of guys that they brought in this past year. 1-year contracts of guys who love to compete and love to play and who are playing for their contract life. Guys like the Zach Ertz, Dante Fowler, Jeremy Chin, Bobby Wagner, even Eckler, all these guys. That's what Deebo Samuel is. So I think that's the biggest reason that they brought him in, is his dog mentality, DAWG. That's what they're bringing here in Washington, that they're building. Now, my analysis of this trade. There are some risks, obviously, in bringing in Deebo Samuel. You've seen it everywhere. You've seen the injury prone. You've seen the out of shape. You've seen the diva attitude. You've seen the salary cap number. You've seen the draft pick that he's using. These are all absolutely fair concerns. I understand all of those concerns. You have to weigh those risks against what you're bringing into this team. Every player has a risk. Whether it's a free agent, whether it's a guy you're trading for, it doesn't matter. There is risk involved for every player. Think about the guys who were free agents or who were trades last year. They all had risks and outperformed, but I'm just throwing out a bunch of guys who have been either traded or released and signed, any of those things. The Christian McCaffrey, all he was injury prone. Well, they traded for him in San Francisco, and look what they got out of him. They got an MVP caliber season out of him, a couple seasons out of him. Now the injuries are piling up. Totally get it. But that's the risk. Derrick Henry was a risk this past offseason, and then look what he ended up doing. All of these guys have some sort of baggage, some sort of risk. Nobody is coming to your team as perfection. So you have to weigh them. The contract status is definitely a concern, but that's why you built up such a large cap space, is so that you can make moves like this. So $17 million this year, if they decide to go that route, is a chunk. It's not outrageous. And a 5th-round draft pick, put it this way. Last year's 5th-round draft pick for Washington was Dominique Hampton, a guy they have a lot of faith that he could be something. His athleticism is outrageous, how athletic he is. But in 17 games, he was inactive for 16 of them. And he played in the 17th game, and he played 6 special teams snaps. That's it, the whole season. Would you trade Deebo Samuel for Dominique Hampton, even with the $17.5 million? Of course you would. You would, because the upside is there in terms of what he can possibly bring. Health concerns. Yes, he's 29 years old. By the way, he's younger than Terry McLaurin. Just put it that way. He's only missed 9 games in the last 4 years. However, he has played hurt for a lot of those games. I mean, he had pneumonia last year. He's had shoulder issues. He's had rib issues. He's had it all. because of his physical style of play. So there are risks with his health. Totally get it. But what you're hoping, again, is that he's motivated, that he's healthy, and that he sees an opportunity for a contract, all of these things. And so you hope that that health is not as bad as it might be. Some people have concerns about. He's only 29. He just turned 29. He's not 33. He's not 35. He's not Zach Ertz age. He's not Bobby Wagner age. Right? And again, guys who are coming off injury-plagued years can have injury-free seasons. We saw it with Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz played in every game, even though the last couple of years he has not played that much. So just keep that in mind. There are also plenty of guys who have been injury-plagued, and then you come to the team and more injuries. Totally understandable. That's where you got to trust Adam Peters. So my overall analysis is you can't not like this deal. It has so much upside of what he can do to help Jaden Daniels and help this offense. He's a right guy in the locker room. He will bring veteran leadership. He will bring attitude, competitiveness. He'll bring that dog. And look, Adam Peters has done it plenty of times. He knows what he's doing when he brings these guys in. So always keep that in mind. The cap space is not hurt. You have Dominique Hampton for Deebo Samuel trade equivalent. I get all that. This is a guy you want on your team. He's not wide receiver 1. He might not even be wide receiver 2. But if he brings you 700 to 900 yards of offense and a half dozen touchdowns, think about what that offense means. Think about what Cliff Kingsbury is going to be able to do with him and move him all around the line of scrimmage and open things up for Terry McLaurin, because they're going to be focused on Deebo Samuel coming out of the slot, coming out of the backfield. Now all of a sudden, Terry McLaurin's wide open. Now all of a sudden, Jaden Daniels has bigger lanes to run through. He is a guy that other teams game plan for. So don't forget that he still has that juice in him. And you just have to hope that he stays healthy. But there is no downside to this. It's not a big chunk of cap space. And it's not for a lot of draft picks. And it could be just 1 year. And if it fails, you move on. You have no dead cap following 2026 as long as you keep his contract all in this year's cap hit. I love it. The spoiler alert that I gave earlier, I have not actually pre-ordered a Deebo Samuel #1 Commanders jersey, but maybe after training camp, after I see what he's doing in training camp, just might get on that website and say, ooh, I got to get me a Commanders Deebo Samuel #1 jersey. I love this deal. There is no downside to this deal whatsoever. You're not trading high draft picks. You're not using a ton of cap space, and you're bringing in a potentially huge asset to this offense. So I love the deal, and I'm so glad that the Commanders did it. Love to hear your thoughts on it. Make sure you leave a comment in the video. Tell us what you think of this. Tell us if you think that Washington made the right deal, if you think Adam Peters has gone a little crazy making these deals for Marshawn Lattimore and Deebo Samuel, a couple of guys who have injury histories. I get it. I totally understand where you're coming from, but every guy has questions and concerns and major risks. And hopefully this one works out for Washington, because the 2025 season is about to be maybe the most amazing season that we've seen in our lifetime for the Commanders, and that's what we hope for. If you hit that like button, if you hit that subscribe, if you hit that notification, if you hit that share, we would really appreciate it here on Ref the District. Make sure you check us out every Wednesday live, 7:30 p.m. Eastern on YouTube and Facebook. And make sure you tell your friends all about us here at Ref the District. For Nathan, for Trev, I'm the Stoner, and until next time, be a fan.